Emma, welcome to the podcast. It's great to have you with us. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you, and it's great to be on the podcast. I've enjoyed listening to past episodes, so thank you very much for inviting me. It's great.
Well, that's really nice to hear. As I say, it's great to be talking to you, and we're going to be finding out a bit more about the Birmingham Art Book, which is a really exciting piece of work that's just come out. But first of all, do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself? I mean, you're a born and bred Brummie, but living and working in Cambridge now. So do you want to tell us a little bit about your story?
Yeah, sure. So yes, I was born in Bourneville in Birmingham, to the smell of Cadbury's chocolate, which was great as a child. And yeah, I lived in Birmingham till I was 18 when I moved away to university, like a lot of people do. And after a few years at university, I went to live in China and various things. And yeah, we've lived in London for 10 years, but I've been in Cambridge for the last 17 years, where I've been a commercial artist and various things. So yeah, I still have strong connections with Birmingham. But yeah, we've lived in Cambridge now for quite a while now.
China's a bit of an anomaly.
Yeah.
There must be a bit of a story behind that, I'll take it.
Yeah, I trained as a teacher and I wanted to do some work with a voluntary organisation. So I went over there as a sort of teaching English in a quite a poor university there. And yeah, I had a great 2 years. It was quite an experience. Seems a long time ago now. But yeah, it was a real adventure at the time, when you're younger.
Brilliant. So in terms of your career as an artist then, as you said, you trained and worked as a teacher. Is the art thing something that you kind of dipped in and out of, and then it became a point where you wanted it to be a kind of full-time career?
Yeah, exactly that. So I think like a lot of people, you sort of review things later on in life. So after years as a teacher, and then I worked in London as an exhibition designer. So I worked at the Science Museum in London and various other sort of cool places. And when we moved to Cambridge, I just thought, actually, what I've wanted to do for a long time is go back to my art. I'd always pottered with it, but wanted to sort of commit to working on it full time. And yeah, it's sort of, so 10 years now as a commercial artist in Cambridge, and I work with galleries. I do the odd bit of teaching. So yes, it's something that had always been part of my life. I did my A-levels at Cadbury College in Birmingham, did art and textiles. And so, yeah, so to be able to work on it full time has been a challenge, but yeah, it's make a dream, really.
Right. So most artists will say they've got a style or a trademark or some kind of inspiration that they follow closely. So what would you say yours is? Is there something in particular, or?
Yeah, I guess you describe me as a paper or a collage artist. So collage is always something that I've loved doing. My ethos is just to use recycled papers rather than sort of new papers. So I can go through magazines and cut little bits of colour, and then do very intricate sort of landscapes, which I've been lucky enough to sell to America and Australia and New Zealand and things. And actually that was from my childhood in Birmingham, when doing A-level art and textiles, we didn't have the money for really expensive art materials. So I just find whatever's lying around the house, magazines and letters and stamps and things. And so it's always been a part of my ethos, but also my work, just to try and use materials that are around me rather than, new and expensive raw materials, really. So yeah, I guess you'd call me a mixed media collage artist. That sounds good, doesn't it?
So I'm sure when the neighbours are putting the recycling out on a Monday, Tuesday night, or whenever it is, you're out there saying, "Don't throw that away. I can use that pile of magazines there, or those boxes, or whatever." Yeah.
Yeah, and you get to the point you've got too many, and and yeah, years and years ago we used to have chickens, so I'd swap the chickens' eggs for magazines from local people when they'd finished with them. It was like sort of old bartering system. Yeah.
It's been brilliantly resourceful. Love to hear that. So, so the Birmingham Art Book, which is the reason we kind of got you on here today, it's a really impressive and a timely piece of work as well, because I mean, Birmingham's laid down a bit of a marker as a real hotspot for creatives right now, particularly the art scene. So do you want to just give us a little overview of the book?
Yeah, sure. So the Birmingham Art Book, which for those who haven't seen is there. The Birmingham Art Book is the 7th in the City Art Book series. So I started in 2016 with the Cambridge Art Book. And the idea behind all the books in the series, which are now, as I say, 7 cities, was to show iconic cities through the eyes of the local artists that the cities inspire. So obviously, with, like you say, with Birmingham, with its creative, artistic community, I really just wanted to show the city in a sort of new and contemporary way, but through the eyes of the artists that the city inspires. So that might be artists working in, paper or paint or urban sketches or illustration. So through a real mix of media and styles, just show the city to locals and to tourists. And the book, throughout the books, we've worked with professional artists. I work with quite a lot of students at the Birmingham University on the illustration course, urban sketchers, retired professionals, a real range of artists working in different styles, but also different ages and experiences, I guess, in their artistic careers.
So what was the process for collating and then selecting the pieces, Emma? Because it's a big wide world out there, isn't it? The art world.
It is,
You just ask for submissions and then kind of...
Yeah. So early on when I was doing the first book, I realised that, art is very subjective. We all like different things, but also it was almost too much responsibility as the editor, just for me to choose the work, because we all like different things. So for each of the books, we have a local panel we put together of art and city experts, and then we invite artists to submit images free for consideration. And I think for Birmingham, we had well over 500 images submitted for the book, which was fantastic. And then once that submission process has ended, the panel sits down and we go through every single image, and look at it subjectively in terms of quality, in terms of will it fit in geographically with the book, until we sort of find, can choose a final selection for inclusion. So the images in the Birmingham book, I think they're such a high quality, but they also, I think, just really represent the vitality and the creativity of the city. So I think it's a really good selection of images.
Fantastic. And you've just had a very successful launch too, I believe, in the Jewellery Quarter.
Yeah, we were very fortunate that the Royal Birmingham Society of Artists hosted us in their fantastic new renovated gallery space, and there was about 95, I think, artists and their family came. The Lord Mayor of Birmingham came, which was lovely. And yeah, it was a real opportunity just to celebrate, particularly after COVID, I think, the hard work of everybody involved in the book, the publishers, myself, the artists, and just to celebrate, I think, what is a really lovely book, which hopefully I think will, really represents Birmingham in a new and different way, and I think represents what the city is about, which is the diversity and the colour and the creativity. So yeah, the launch was brilliant. I really enjoyed it, and I think particularly after COVID, just to get everybody together and be in the same room was fantastic. Yeah, it was great.
Sounds great. It's lovely to hear. And we're going to get on to some of the artists in a minute, but you only got to turn to the back and you'd see some of the fantastic endorsements you've received as well from some real stellar names in the sort of Birmingham landscape. Do you want to tell us about some of those? Yeah.
So for all of the city art books, we try and reach out to celebrities and ask them to look at the images and see if it's something they will endorse. And we've had great results in that in the past from Stephen Fry, Joanna Lumley, Claudia Winkleman. So Paul McCartney wrote the introduction to the Liverpool book. So with Birmingham, the first person I thought of was Dame Julie Walters. I grew up absolutely adoring Dame Julie. I even had the big perm that Julie had, in the 80s. And so we reached out to Dame Julie Walters, and the first response was, well, she doesn't really do that sort of thing. But when I sent her the images and she had a look at them, she was so enthusiastic about endorsing the book and commenting, about the city that she grew up in and that she loves. And so that was great. So we have Frank Skinner, again, another local lad, Ruby Turner, Jasper Carrot, Josie Lawrence, Toya Wilcox, and Benjamin Zephaniah. So these are all people with a passion for the city who were sent the images and took the time to come up with a quote for the back cover. And I think that's testament to the artist, the quality of the images in there, that they wanted to do that. So yeah, some really great people there. Yeah. Very honoured.
And Joe Lycett's written the foreword, is that right?
Yeah, so when I sort of was looking at, we always have we try and get somebody, great to write the foreword to the book, and lots of people suggested Joe Lycett. He's obviously very local and passionate about the city, but he's also a keen artist. He does his own artwork. So yeah, that was great. He again looked at the images and felt that he could do that, and he's written a very funny foreword to the book in his own style, very different to what we've had before, but very Joe Lycett. So again, we're very honoured that he was able to do that for us.
Well, he's a national treasure now, let alone a
national
treasure. So yeah, I'm a bit biased because I'm actually a huge Frank Skinner fan.
Oh yeah,
but I thought his quote was absolutely fantastic. He says, describes the book as being like giving a pair of magic spectacles through which you can see Birmingham's unusual, oft hidden, oft unappreciated beauty more clearly and more exhilarating than you ever did before.
Yeah,
that's what a quote. That is fantastic.
It's what a quote, and I think that is the point of the books is to we all know the cities that know these cities, but when you see how an artist has interpreted them, and it's not just the familiar sites and locations, it is the quirky, it is the urban sketchers who have sat there and physically sketched what they see in front of them. For me, one of the images in the book is what I always call the McDonald's ramp. Is it Stevenson's ramp? And the artist has just captured it in such a way that you would probably never see that scene now. But it's for me, it's just Birmingham. It represents what's there. So I think that quote does, sum up that it is those quirky hidden places that we don't all necessarily go to. And it's the launch my great aunt came to, and she's 90. She's lived in Birmingham all her life. And actually, as we drove into Birmingham and we were in the jewellery quarter, she said, "Oh, I haven't seen these places for so long." And seeing them in the book and how artists have shown them, I think it just gives that sort of really fresh perspective, and hopefully will encourage people just to walk around and have a look at the city that they live in or that they're visiting. It's a fabulous city.
Yeah, I think that will make a lot of people smile, actually, because there's been various polls over the years about kind of iconic Birmingham landmarks, and old Joe the University clock and things like that. And McDonald's ramp always comes out in the sort of top 3, top 5. It is for one of those quirky kind of Birmingham institutions.
Well, it is, isn't it? Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, we've talked about some of the stars that have endorsed the book, but I guess the real stars are the artists themselves, aren't they?
Absolutely, yeah.
And you kind of touched on it a bit, but I said earlier that the release was quite timely because of this successful period for Birmingham's creative sector, and we've had the design festival and lots of independent exhibitions and galleries popping up now, and there's like a real pride now where people want to own pieces of art and pieces of merchandise and even clothes that have got based on Birmingham designs. Okay. Yeah. And is that something you've kind of really tried to harness with this?
Yeah, I think so. As I say, the books are as much about the very familiar. There'd be no point having a book about a city without the familiar landmarks and iconic things. But for me, it's about some of the lesser known places as well. I mean, I've been associated with Birmingham for almost 50 years now, and I'd been to the jewellery quarter. I bought my wedding ring there a long time ago, but I didn't know the cemetery exists. And it was when an artist submitted some fabulous images of sort of a walk through the Keyhill Cemetery in the jewellery quarter that I thought, well, I'll go and see that place for myself. So I think it's about the iconic, but also about the sort of those hidden places. And I think a lot of people coming to the city, they will see those very familiar landmarks like the bull ring and things, but there's a lot more to the city, and there are those hidden gems which they might not know about. So we always put a map in the book as well, just to sort of encourage people just to walk around and see the less familiar sites as well, I think.
Yeah, that's a really shrewd idea. I know it's difficult as editor. Are there any contributors in particular that you'd like to highlight?
I couldn't say a contributor, but I think there's some really, I think what's great about it is that you see it through people of different ages' eyes. So as I said, I worked with some students at the Birmingham University on the illustration course. So obviously they bring a very perhaps quirky, young perspective to some of the images. There's a great one of Digbeth, which is, it's really funky and quirky. And there's some of the more traditional sort of painters who see it through their eyes, sort of around Canal Basin and things. There's a fantastic image that I love of a family in the Chinese Quarter just sitting around a table having a Chinese meal, and it's just fantastic. It just sums up, that sort of environment. But no, I think what's great is that the variety in the book is it's a huge variety of images and style. So I think you'd be hard pressed to not look through it and love a good portion of it, and obviously recognize the places. And so I'm very fond of all the artists, and it was lovely at the launch to actually put faces to the images, because of course I know their images so well from putting the book together. So it was great to actually meet them and go, oh yeah, you're that image and you're that image. And there's some talented artists in Birmingham. There really is. It's a talented city for sure.
Yeah, those who've listened to the podcast before all know we're big fans of Brumhaus Alex.
Yes,
Edwards,
yeah.
And he's submitted. So he's got some work included, hasn't he?
He's got quite a few in there. Yeah, he's very, like you say, he's got a very unique style and very recognizable. And actually, I didn't know Alex's work before I started researching the book. And it was my dad, who's almost, well, he was 80, who said, oh, I found this artist for you. His style is fantastic. I love his work and everything. And that's how I came about him. So I think what's great about his work is it does just appeal to all ages. It's a very iconic style. And it's great that we've got Alex's work in the book. Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, for someone who doesn't know a huge amount about art like myself, you know it's him straight away, because that sort of quirky geometric landscape sort of design. I think it's fantastic.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
So yeah, going back to your role as the editor again, you've touched on this, but it's worth noting that this is part of a series, a sort of, not I say a national series. This is the 7th city. So do you want to tell us what are the other ones? You started with Cambridge, obviously, as a
so I started with Cambridge, and the idea was just to show the city that I live in through the local artists' eyes, to help artists. Can be a challenge to get your work seen by a bigger audience, and just to show my city sort of through a different perspective. And it was going to be a one-off. It was quite a challenge to even get it to published, and but the series sort of grew. So we now have the Cambridge book, the Oxford, Edinburgh, Dublin, Liverpool. Bristol and Bath was just published a few weeks ago after a delay with COVID, and now Birmingham. So I think it's a really lovely selection of cities, and the books are available sort of online from tourist attractions and worldwide. I had an email recently from a lady who lived in an elderly lady who lives in Melbourne in Australia, and she'd picked up one of the books in her local bookshop, and it was reminiscing about her time living in Oxford, I think it was. So yeah, it's sort of a great series of books which I think represent these cities in a new way, really, I think.
Wow, that's great. It's have you started thinking about the next one and where that might be based on, or?
So the next book is going to be Manchester. And I'm already working with about 70 artists in Manchester, and the panel for the Manchester book will get together in September to work on that. So that'll be a new challenge. But I think one of the artists at the Birmingham book launch said, we were talking about the Birmingham Art Book, and she said, you can see that your heart and soul has gone into this book. And I think, I've loved working on all of them, and they're all very precious to me. I spent 2 years working on them. But I think the Birmingham Art Book, being a Brummie and having that connection to the city, I think you can sort of see my heart in the book, hopefully, and sort of just appreciate all the art in it. So yeah, it's a great series, and I'm very lucky to work on them. I feel very honoured.
Fantastic. Yeah, well, we'll put all the links in the episode notes and everything. But where can people go to get hold of the book, to find out more about it, and also about your work in general?
Yeah, well, I'm Emma Bennett. I have a website called emmabennettcollage.co.uk, and all of the City Art books can be found on the City Art Books City Through the Eyes of the Artist.co.uk. We've got a new website. We used to have one for each book, and now we're condensing them. So maybe you can put that on the web page as well. And yeah, the Birmingham book, after a delay with paper and printing and all sorts of things, should be in all bookshops in Birmingham within the next 2 weeks. So yeah, it should be, in all major bookshops, online, wherever you get your normal books, really. So look out for the Birmingham Art Book. And it's got a very distinct purple cover, which I guess I was inspired by Cadbury's when I designed the cover. I can't remember, but yeah, so it's quite distinctive cover, I think. So
yep, and the floozies on the front cover as well.
Yeah, I love designing the cover for this. It was a dream to work on, but it had to be the floozy, didn't it? It had to be the floozy, and it's just such an iconic scene, and yeah, it's just such a lovely building. Yeah,
and she's just got her water back as well.
Yes, I hear it's all been cleaned, hasn't it? Yeah.
I think it took about half a day for someone to go and put fairy liquid in it, but
no,
that's classic Birmingham behaviour, unfortunately. Yeah. Well, Emma, it's been really great to hear about the book and yourself and your work, and wish you all the best with it as it kind of rolls out into the stores over the coming weeks. We will share all the links, but if the launch is anything to go by, it's going to be a real success. And all I'm left to ask now, it's the question that we finish off by asking all our guests, because we're the Epic Brum podcast, what makes Birmingham epic?
Oh, that's a big question. Well, where do you start? I think for me, what makes Birmingham epic is the people. I think, it's a very diverse, creative city. There's not many cities I think you can compare Birmingham to in terms of the friendliness of the people. That is always the thing for me. People will always stop and have a chat. Everyone's very kind and friendly. So for me, I think Birmingham is the people. For me, I'm a big fan of architecture, and I think Birmingham has been very clever in how it's evolved its architecture to incorporate the old with the new. I think it's very, we all know Selfridges and Grand Central and things, and the library. But for me, Birmingham is a city that's not afraid to be bold and daring in its architecture. And I think there's a lot of cities that aren't like that. So I think that sort of creativity shows through in the landscape and the buildings. Obviously, it's got the canal networks, which are fabulous. It's got the Jewellery Quarter. I think, Botanical Gardens, Edgbaston. So I don't know, for me, Birmingham is the full package. I think it's not just about the city and the buildings and the locations. It's about the friendliness and the people that live in it. And you don't get that everywhere. So for me, it's a full package, really, I'd say, about Birmingham.
Full package indeed. That's a wonderful way to round off, Emma. So thank you very much again.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you. It's been great. Thank you.